Hi guys, welcome back. This week's video is actually a request from one of our lovely subscribers. On my studio tour video, I got a request to take a deeper look into my wooden stamp collection. So here I am with my collection of wooden stamps. So I'm not just going to take you through my collection, that's not it. While that's a lot of fun to go through these stamps, I'm also going to talk a little bit about how to use these stamps in clay because it does involve a little bit of a technique. Also, I'll share details on where to get them. And while we are here, I'm thinking might as well make a few pieces using some of these stamps. I'll show you some of my work that I have made using these, how I've used them in different forms on different things. So that's the plan for this video. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Alright, so here's my collection of stamps. Now I have tried to categorize them size-wise. So all of these stamps that you see here, all of them I've actually got from India. And sometimes, some I have picked up on Amazon India. Sometimes I've had friends who've, found them somewhere and they picked it up. For example, all of these beautiful ones are actually from one of my friends, Apurva. So all of them are from India, and I found most of them on Amazon India, but you can find them on normal Amazon.com as well. I will link these in the description so you can actually just go and check these out. There are quite a few of these now available, and you can find them on Etsy as well. So these are the two places where you can find these stamps. Now these stamps are mostly used for what is called block printing. Now block printing is actually adding some kind of fabric dye to these pieces and then printing it on piece of cotton, and that's quite having its moment right now, the block printing fabric. But that's what essentially these stamps have been made for. So that's why if you see, all of them have this white thingy on top. Now if you see, most of these the new ones that whenever you receive one, whenever you buy one, you will find that they will have this white color, white paint kind of a thing covered on top. And this helps probably with the block printing, the way they block print, probably it helps to hold on to the dye or whatever it is. But for clay, this doesn't work. So what I'll usually do is, whenever I find these, now if you try to actually press this in clay and get a texture, your clay will stick to this. So what I'll usually do is take a sanding pad, dip it in water, and just kind of get rid of this. So let me just do that for you right now. So this is my sanding pad. I'm going to take this and just get rid of this white paint or whatever it is on top of this, right? So just take that off, just cleaning it off. Yeah, now this is much better. Now when you use this in clay, it's not going to stick. I mean, obviously if you keep using it repeatedly in wet clay, it will start sticking again, but this should work with clay. Now that's one thing that you have to remember. So all of them will come with this white thingy, and I have scrubbed most of these down so it's easy to press in clay. Now this is not really white, this is the clay actually now, because I use it quite a lot. So yeah, that's how you use this in clay, and we will make a few projects. I'll show you how to, I'll actually demonstrate how I use them. Like I said, some of them come with this little knob at the back. Like I said, this is used for block printing, so they need a little thing on the back to press it in. So that's why some of them will have this, most of them won't. The other thing with these is that while this looks gorgeous and you may think that I can make so many pieces with this, but it is not very practical to use with clay. Why? Because when you're trying to press this in clay, you have to kind of keep beating around all of the edges and make sure that you get a nice deep impression, like uniform impression all over. And that's usually tricky with this size stamps. So if you're thinking of buying these, I would say go with smaller to medium size. Something like this is also tricky. In fact, this one is also tricky. They're not easy because you have to press this in clay and then you have to literally press it all along to get a nice even texture. It's really tricky to get an even texture with bigger stamps, and I have used these a lot, especially this one. This one's actually a Ganesha stamp. I don't know if you can see. I have used this a lot and it does work, but it's just you need to kind of press a little harder and spend some more time trying to get the impression. So this one is not that great. It looks lovely. Probably I can use it to make an underglaze transfer. That would work better. I think that would be a better idea to use this for actually creating the texture. This might not be ideal. However, even these, like I said, while you can get a texture, it's just a little bit more tricky. You won't get an even impression. But stamps this size, these are all gorgeous. They are great. They work really well because you're able to press in clay and then you can kind of press from all sides and get a nice deep texture. So these sizes are all great, but the bigger size is a little tricky, so just be aware. Now, what do you use these for? You can use them for a lot of different things. I'll show you a few samples here that I have. So I have mostly made a lot of trinket dishes. So this one is actually, okay, here. So this is the one I've used for this, and this is one of my favorite textures. So if you see, there are some stamps that I use more often than others. I think it's nice to have a collection, but at the end of the day, if the fact is you're going to go back and use your favorites over and over again, and at least that's what I do. So this is something that I've used quite a lot, and I've made these little trinket dishes with a nice blue border, something like this with this. Also for Diwali last year, I made these little incense holders with this stamp again. This was a gift from one of my friends, and this is the one I used for the incense holder. I do have them in a couple of different colors, so it's a nice little addition. You can do trinket dishes. Then I have this Ganesha stamp, which again I use for a little trinket dish. So that's the Ganesha stamp. Another one, so this is again one of my very popular pieces for Diwali. Again, all of these are also made with Ganesha stamp. So that's one. Then I have these little vases that again I use this texture. It's on a darker clay body, and you can see a little bit of the body coming through, right? So that's one way. Again, this is another one using this texture. I put it over 3 times, made a repeated pattern, and use that, right? Then I made these little boat platters. Now this again has one of these stamps. You stamp it across, and I have a bunch of these here. I have used them in for mugs and stuff, but I don't have any of those in my studio right now. So just showing the pieces that I have available. Again, another stamp, and this is actually shadow blue from Clayscapes, a beautiful, beautiful glaze. This is actually one of these border stamps. Here, one of these border stamps to make this, right? So you can use it a lot of different ways. For example, I used this one to create this repeating pattern on the mug body. I have made a lot of mugs with the stamps in the past. I just don't have any of them right now, but you can use them for making plates, on the side of the bowls, on mugs, trinket dishes of course. So these can be used in a lot of different ways. Now let me just show you quickly what I have. This is again one of my favorites, little bird. I've made a bunch of trinket dishes with this. Again, a little peacock. Clearly there's a theme here, peacock. Then more floor. Oh, I have 2 of these. Oopsie. All right. Yeah, that happens sometimes. So some floral ones here. Okay, and again more peacocks, some trees. Again, they look beautiful. More peacocks, yay. Also, these stamps are actually used for applying henna, some form of henna to hands. That's also another thing that I've seen people use these for. Some more designs. So these are mostly smaller ones for borders or making small patterns, repeating patterns. You can make a lot of repeating patterns with these. That's the beauty of these. So there are a whole bunch of these designs. Again, these tend to be my favorites. I love this shape, and there are a bunch of different designs. They all look pretty similar, but I mean they're still different. So that's that. And then you have these border ones. You can make a lot of borders, and not necessarily, but yeah, again, repeating patterns you can create. Oh wait, I have one more that I can show you with this that I've used recently. I can't believe I completely forgot about these. So if you see, these are my berry baskets, right? And here on the side, I've actually used one of these patterns. One of these. Oh, maybe this one, yeah. So one of these to create a repeating pattern all around, right? Again, here also it is. You get the idea, right? So you can use these to create, this one. You can use these to create these patterns, borders and things like that. Repeating patterns, basically, you can cover the entire surface as well, or just create borders. So that's another way you can use them. So yeah, this is texture, another option for texture. Use them as you please. Now let's make a few pieces. Oh, and before we get started, I wanted to share another one. So this is again made with the small stamp. I made a repeated pattern for the fish body, little fish dish, and I think that looks wonderful too. This is yet to be glazed, but this is another idea. Alright, so I have my slab of clay already rolled and compressed. So I'm going to make something simple with these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bunch of these little cutters that I have in my studio, and I'm going to cut out a few shapes, and then we'll start the stamping and making things. So this is a cutter from Debbie Dela Cruz, so I'm going to just use this for probably the bigger pieces. I can use these, so just place this on clay, press it in, then maybe a couple of these for smaller. Again, this is another cookie cutter which has this scalloped edge, which is cute. So maybe a couple of these. I'll get another one of these. Maybe this one here. Okay, so I have a bunch of shapes cut out. This will all be recycled. I'm going to move these to smaller boards. Alright, let's get started. So I'm going to bring in a board here, place this here. My favorite stamp. I think I'm going to go with this one. I'm just going to try and find the center here. Okay, and then you have to remember when you're pressing this in, when you're pressing this in, if you just press from the top, just downward pressure, it's not going to give you a very even, clear texture. So what you have to do is, when you place this in here, you press a little bit from the top, literally wiggle the stamp. You press the top, you press a little bit at the base, a little on the left, a little on the right? So you do this 4 sides. It's only, you're literally moving it like this, very lightly, and that's when you usually get a decent impression. So I'm just spending some time making sure. And even now with all of this, you can see this side, it's not very even, right? But this works. It still works. So you have to be careful with, and this is a relatively small stamp. So these stamps also, you have to be a little bit more careful. And always start with the scrap clay, test stamping it, and then go on to the bigger main piece, right? So this is one. I'm going to put it on the side. Let's bring in this guy and try the bird stamp. Again, I'm going to try and find the center. Okay. And then first is downward pressure, and then I'm going to try and find all the sides of the stamp, make sure it's going deep in. Sometimes what will happen is if you press too deep in one direction, impression will be much deeper there, and sometimes you will get a double impression as well. Look at this. This is a nice deep impression, right? I love that. This guy here, slightly bigger stamp, so I'm going to bring this in and place it at the center, more or less the center. Okay, again I'm going to press. First is downward motion, and then I'm going to make sure that the stamp has had a chance to dig into the clay from all sides. So just wiggling it, whatever little wiggle room I have, just a tiny bit. Wow, that's a nice impression, right? You see, that's lovely. All right, let's bring this guy here. Now for this, I'm thinking I'll use one of the bigger pieces so I can demonstrate how to use a bigger piece. Now this is a relatively bigger stamp, okay, and I'm just seeing the orientations has to be in the center. Because this is a bigger stamp, I'm kind of trying to align it in a way that it makes sense and doesn't look too odd. We'll see. Well, okay, right, I've placed the stamp where I want my impression to be, and then first is obviously pressing it down, downward motion. That's one. Now I'm going to have to, and because this has this little holder knob, I can't do much. I have to go around all the edges and press them in, making sure that the stamp's actually in the clay. Again, I'm going all around. Oopsie. Right? With bigger stamps, you will have to do a little bit more work. Alright. That's lovely. But you will still see this is a deeper impression here, and this is not as deep. I mean, this still works, but the point is that you can see the difference there, right? So that's the challenge with bigger stamps. You have to be a little bit more, you have to put in a lot more pressure to get an even impression. Okay, that's cute. Let's get on to the last one, and I'm thinking we'll create a repeating pattern for this one. Let's try with this. Let's create a repeating pattern with this first. So I'm going to go in at the edge at an angle. See, these smaller stamps are the easiest to work, but again in this also you have to make sure that you kind of wiggle the stamp in all the different, so you get a nice deep impression. Okay, the 4 corners done. Well, I'm thinking let's maybe make a border. What do you say? Again, I'm just trying to create some kind of repeating pattern here. Just ideas for you to. The longer one I'll usually just do, back and forth like this. Just rock it a little bit. Don't necessarily have to do this. Just rocking it back and forth will usually do the trick. There you go. That's your some form of repeating pattern happening there. Now at the center, I am thinking, which is this one, right? Now we bring this in the center and again press it down. That's first, and then I'm going to, this one will need more than just back and forth. This will be back and forth and top and bottom. Yeah, that's when you get a nice deep impression, right? That's how you can use these. They are a lot of fun. Now let's try and make these into, I'll show you what they look like after they've been shaped. So these are just some of the ways you can use the stamps to add texture to your pieces. You can create repeating patterns or you can use them by themselves. Now, obviously you can use them on plates, platters, bowls, mugs, little trinket dishes. Also, if you have something like this, you can actually, instead of making it into a plate, you can actually make it into a wall decor, a wall hanging, a wall tile. There are a lot of things you can do with this. It's a texture tool. I mean, you can use it as you want it. So that was the video for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any ideas for future videos, if there's anything you'd like to see, learn, know more about, please let me know, and I'll see you next week.